let's talk to the Harold the H. P. Cock-a-doodle-doo. I sent him on assignment to Rocky.
Oh, did you?
And
did you pay the bill to send him up there?
No, he paid it himself.
Oh.
He found a solicitor who vanished 134 years ago with his servant girl, and who'd have a servant girl?
Wow, right.
And the words girl. And the solicitor, it's just amazing. And he saw them sitting together at the bar.
Oh, fair enough.
134 years old.
Okay.
Are you there, Harold?
I am, Danny, and yes, you are the goat of radio, so I'm very excited.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. But where did you find these people 134 years later?
Yeah, well, you sent me on assignment to Rockhampton, so that's where I went. And the invoice is coming, so don't worry about that.
Send it to Damien.
Yeah, I will. Look, the solicitor was William Henry Miskin. Now, I've told you about him before. From the 1870s to 1890s, he became Brisbane's leading solicitor. He was also founding president of the Toowong Shire Council, president of the Geographical Society, president of the Royal Society, and on the board of Queensland Museum. He ran a number of legal cases in Ipswich, including one that he liquidated the assets of an Ipswich convict, which included the convict's own teeth. Now, and for well over a decade, Miskin lived in and owned the historic home called Dover Court at Toowong, and the house is haunted by an Ipswich-born ghost.
I know it.
Yeah, look, in 1891, that's when Miskin vanished, and so too did his pregnant 21-year-old servant. Now, because he's pregnant, it has to be a girl, right? We know that. Now, Miskin was 49 years old at the time, which means their age difference was about the same as Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. Now, both of these two, they seemingly vanished off the face of the earth. But what really happened was that they ran off together to America to have the baby. Now, he only reappeared, Miskin only reappeared 2 years later when he returned to Brisbane to finalise his divorce. Now, he then disappeared again and out of sight of the gossipy Brisbane socialites. Anyway, Danny, I've now tracked Miskin at 700 kilometres north to Rockhampton, which is where he hoped to live out the rest of his life in relative obscurity. But he could not avoid the headlines there either. You see, in 1898, there was a big fire that destroyed Miskin's law offices in the Fitzroy Chambers in the centre of town. Nothing was covered by insurance, and the only thing that he saved were a few books and papers. Then in 1904, a cash box went missing from the Rockhampton branch office of the Ipswich Woolen Company, which backed onto Miskin's office. Now, the Ipswich Woolen Company, years earlier, had built Queensland's first and biggest woolen mill right here in North Ipswich. And that was so important then that its opening attracted the Governor, Premier, multiple government ministers, and not one but 3 mayors. That's how important it was to Ipswich. Anyway, the office up there lost the cash box, and the missing cash box in it was £4 in cash, some cheques, and a number of cut sapphires. Although what these gemstones were doing in Ipswich's cash box was never explained. But the next day, the branch manager of the Ipswich company received a letter in which the missing cheques were returned. Now, an investigation that is very much CSI orientated was led by police searching for the typewriter that was used to address the envelope. And that led straight to Miskin's office, where the cash box was found, and it still contained the cash and sapphires. Now, Miskin, he had employed the 18-year-old Leslie Wood, who, under interrogation, he just collapsed and admitted everything.
Weak kid.
Now, yeah, I know. Look, and he'd come from actually a good family. His father was a senior employee of the Oscillation Steam Navigation Company, and his grandfather was an engineer in Melbourne. Now, I can't find a record of conviction, so Miskin may well have got his employee off. In any case, that employee would move down to Brisbane, something that Miskin couldn't do, and he lived with his mother where they stayed in Highgate Hill, and the house is still there.
Is that right?
But it's what happened to Miskin. That's what's interesting, and that's what I was in search of, because it's never fully been traced to its finalisation before. See, Miskin passed away in Rockhampton in 1913. His illegitimate son, born in America, reportedly walked out of the funeral halfway through. That's when he discovered the circumstances of his own scandalous birth. Now, this week I visited for the first time Miskin's gravesite and headstone, and it's in the South Rockhampton Cemetery. Now, Miskin is buried there along with that servant girl. So now I've been able to complete Miskin's journey from the Ipswich courts via Dover Court in Toowong and finally to the Rockhampton Cemetery. It was, Danny, I've got to say, it was quite an emotional experience finally discovering and visiting his last resting place. And of course, Danny, you know that Dover Court is the title of a book I published a couple of years ago, and Miskin features quite prominently in there.
In Miskin Street or Miskin Road at Toowong. Isn't there a Miskin Road at Toowong?
Miskin Street, yep, and that's exactly named after this solicitor who had so much to do with Ipswich and ended his days up in Rocky, which we now know.
I know my stuff. Now, how can we read about this? Your sister's listening, by the way. Could you text me back, please, Sophie? Anyhow, can you tell us where we can read this and many other stories about Ipswich?
Absolutely. Go onto my website, historyouthere.com.
You can be heard in other places too, but we're not going to mention them. Historyouthere.com. Harold the H. Ark.
Oh, you want me back?
Harold the H. Ark. P. Cockadoodle-doo on West Bremer Radio. It is 8:21.